they can't say that this is the style of the Wachau Valley now, because like 300 years ago, they did not have stainless steel. That was not tradition. But these 5 or 6 wineries, they write big on the houses, tradition and heritage and terroir, but they all use selected yeast. They all use carbon to find their wines. And this is also not like, this is not terroir for us.
The von der Vogelwaide winery counts almost as a rebellion in almost every sense in the region of Wachau. They all use native yeast, planted Syrah, make cuvées instead of single varietal wines, doesn't show the vineyard or the ripeness level on the label, vinifying small oak, not afraid of malolactic fermentation, you get the point. They are also one of the few gay vintner couples in the country of Austria, and they built up their successful winery like a startup in the last couple of years by recultivating steep vineyards in often abandoned territories. I love to see more diversity in the Wachau as much as I admire the courage and perseverance of these 2 guys to bring a new taste to this wonderful region. Enjoy! Cool, so let's talk about the beginnings a little bit, right? I read somewhere that you actually met because you dated the same man.
Yeah,
is it correct? Cool, so how did you meet?
Yeah, we had that funny, let's say, accident, like we dated the same man in like a time frame of 10 days. And back then I didn't had my coming out at that day. When you don't had your coming out, you think like you're in a box and you don't know any other gay farmers or queer farmers. Mm-hmm. So the guy that I've dated told me that he met 10 days ago another wine grower, and I thought this is not possible because in my mind I was the only one in Austria. Yeah, and then
he wrote me on Instagram.
Yeah, then I wrote him on Instagram, and this is how we met. And it was in June 2018, and I was alone at home, and the apricots were ripe, and so I asked him if he wants to help me with the apricots because I'm alone. And yeah, the next day he came, and not even 7 months later, we decided to start our own winery. So everything was quite fast.
Have you already drunk some wine at the time already? So did you like kind of test the taste of each other?
I mean, I grew up in the Wachau Valley. I was used to a different wine type that Daniel usually drinks. And also when we started then making our own wine, I did not really know what Daniel wants to make or which kind of style he wants to make, because I didn't understand it, because I had the references back then. But now, I mean, from the beginning, we did our own thing, and yeah, it developed.
Because Michael, you come from a very traditional Wachau wine family, right? The Donabaum winery in Spitz. And Daniel, you grew up in Württemberg in Germany, right?
Yeah, I'm coming from, let's say, 60 kilometers south of Stuttgart. So this is mainly red wine area of Germany. But I done a lot of experience in France. This is due to the fact that I'm from the southwest of Germany. And southwest Germany, Baden-Württemberg has not really Riesling production. It's mainly Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris. So all the young winemakers which go to Geisenheim tend to go to Burgundy or to another region in France to learn how they do the wine there. And so I'm coming from a totally different background in terms of white wine. So more like a Chardonnay style Burgundian white wine. And Wachau was the opposite for me. It was more like, the Rheingau in Germany, a bit old-fashioned wine style. That's why I never was interested in Wachau Valley before I met Michael. Not at all. It was never really my favorite region.
What was your impression about the Wachau? Also, maybe when you arrived there, or what did you know about the Wachau?
The first impression was like they have a huge potential in terroir, but what they do out of it, I didn't get it. I didn't understand how you can have so much different kind of terroir, and then you do like wine which doesn't, for me, reflect at all the terroir. was always even a heavy wine with kind of a lot of alcohol and sometimes botrytis inside, or it was a fresh and fruity wine, which you're normally not looking for if you like coming from France. The last step where I worked was Northern Rhone Valley, quite similar to the Wachau in terms of steepness. You will never do like a fruity wine from such steep vineyards. So this was crazy for me. And it was like, at that time when I saw the first time, that was 2018 and 2017, I was in the Wachau Valley. For me, it was like a old-fashioned wine style. I didn't get how you can have that much terroir and then you produce wine like that. It was a bit bizarre for me.
Micha, you always wanted to do wine in the Wachau, or you
didn't
have any choice?
Yeah, at least I had a choice. I've learned it. I've been to a wine growing school, and after that, I've also done like practical experiences in Germany, South Africa, and different places in Austria. Like on some point, I decided for myself that I don't want to work in the wine industry anymore. And this was in 2017. And I signed in for an interior design and interior and product design school. So this is what I've done till 2020. When I met Daniel, I just started interior design and product design, and this is what I then did for 2 years next to our winery. So I was in, let's say, school, and next to it we built up our winery. And when I finished like interior design, knew that I have to be at the winery now, but it was different. Wine growing felt different than before, because when we started, we said that we will produce organic for sure, that we will also, that our goal is to be biodynamic, to make our own wines. And Daniel is so passionate about wine that I get also like affected again. Because in my family, I saw that there was always like a battle of the generations. And sometimes you have big dreams, but you can't like turn them into reality because you have other people that you have to handle with or deal with. And so maybe my drive got a bit lost through that. But when I met Daniel, like I like to be now in the vineyards, and I like the wine industry more. I understand it now way more than before. But we both know that like my heart or my hobby is still interior design. I mean, this is a hobby now, and yeah, I try to get as much time as possible.
The first wine that impressed me under your label was actually the Riesling. And I don't even know how to pronounce it. Tandaradai.
Tandaradai, yeah, perfect.
Tandaradai, because that was completely different from most of the Rieslings I drank in my life. So maybe that would be an evil choice for a blind tasting, I'd say, or kind of confusing. Or for me, you kind of represent a new wave in the Wachau, because as Daniel also said, that the Wachau is a very traditional region, right? Kind of also in some ways very rigid rules and a very strong image, also internationally, I would say, with this ripeness levels, and also always the vineyard should be on the label, and this famous Steinfeder Spitz-Smaragd ripeness levels. But you break from it actually, and if you look at your label, you don't even see the vineyard, I would say, and you don't even see the ripeness level. So that's 180 degrees turn, so to say, from the original idea of a Wachau wine. So why do you do that? And did you think in the beginning that you will succeed, or what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, it developed. Like at the beginning, we were thinking to do wines which are completely opposite of that what is in the region. And I mean, the biggest thing was that I can't do like wine from an area where I've never worked before. I can just apply what I learned in my whole life. And this is more like in terms of cellar work, a French styled work, because I learned it mainly in France. So this is one of the main things what changes, or why we are so different to other wineries, because I never learned how to like do Austrian wine, and I'm not really like, I had no experience in Germany in terms of Riesling, not a lot, just a bit. So I don't know really how to do a classical Riesling from the Mosel, for example, because I never learned it. So our experience from the cellar is mainly French influenced. This is one big difference, I think so. So we did on all wines we do up to now malolactic. This is one of the big difference to Wachau Valley, which normally blocks the malolactic. We don't block it. And yeah, in terms of like how we get our like wine lines, this was, I think, the effect that we just looked for vineyards 2019, and it was very difficult to get new vineyards, to find some vineyards. So we started with around 0.7 hectares, very small, and there already in the 0.7 hectares we had like 5 or 6 different cultivars.
So varieties.
Yeah, now we are working on like 9 or 10 different varieties, and we do have like 14 different single vineyards. So it was quite clear at the beginning we can't produce like a cru. We can't like work on one cru. Doesn't make sense because we could not even fill one barrel of it. So the thing was we needed to really, like at the beginning, decide we need to make blends. And then we orientated us a bit on terms of cultivar, which cultivars will go in a blend. This was a bit the starting of that. This developed because we learn every day more about the cultivars, we learn more about our area. So that's one of the main different points to the other wineries. So we blend a lot of different cultivars. We blend Riesling and Veltliner. This is something what is not really used in Wachau Valley to blend it together. And we use a lot of wood compared to all other wineries. We use especially a lot of small wood. So we use mainly 228-liter barrels. This is the main wood what we use. I think there was at the beginning the biggest differences to the other winemakers in the Wachau Valley.
Yeah, the challenge was the blends, because the varieties still had to fit together.
Yeah.
And like as Daniel said already, Grüner Veltliner and Riesling, no other winery would make a blend out of that. And we also had to blend it like with 4 or 3 other varieties. So our basic blend is Müller-Thurgau, Riesling, Veltliner, and also a bit of Frühroter Veltliner. Vogelwaide is like more the less aromatic grapes. To the Grüner Veltliner and Riesling blend is also Neuburger and Chardonnay in it, which are more like
less on the fruity side. This was more for aging. And what we at the beginning wanted to do is also wines which are like pre-matured. So they are 1 year in the barrel and 1 year in the bottle, and then they go in the sale. So this was what we wanted always to do. And then we started 2019, 2020, Corona hit. We had no labels at the time. We didn't sell wine. So the first time when we really sold wine was in 2021, wines from 2019. So somehow during COVID, we survived without income because we were students, we were small, we just started, and we could like sell the wine two years later.
We didn't needed that much money because the vineyards were rented. And the cellar also, and back then we had not to pay anything for the cellar because the cellar that we rent was in a very bad condition and we had to put a lot of work in it, but therefore we got it for free for the first 2 years. And we lived in like my child room, so we didn't have our own flat or house. But that was the only way to survive 2 years of working full-time without income.
So you basically had a startup, right?
It is a startup, and it is still, we don't, at the moment, we still not make profit. I hope this year will be the first year with profit, because every money that we earn, we need for like growth or for investments. Like we bought last year a labeling machine that was very necessary for us. I mean, every other winery has that. We do not have any all machines that we need still. It will come time by time, and Yeah, when we take new vineyards, we have to repair them. We have to pay interns. We have to pay employees. And the more you cultivate, the more expensive it is. The more your bottles you have to buy, the more corks you need, more labels. It's all money. Now we sell vintage 21 now. We are working on vintage 24. So there is like a big span in between of bigger vintages than 21 were. 2023 is double as big as 21, and we have to survive that somehow. It is a startup. It totally is.
So you basically have a lot of debt capital, just sitting
Yeah.
bottles without an income.
Yeah.
Let's go back maybe to the vineyard, because I think starting a startup vineyard in the Wachau, it's not the easiest one, because it's a very well established vineyard, right? And you already get like basically the, so to say, best vineyards with already covered with vines, right? So how do you find your vineyards in this area? I already read a story about different posters in churches in the region. And
yeah, we definitely started with the posters. We hang them everywhere in the Vogelwaide, and then we also made like in the newspaper, we put like a little announcement. Yeah, this is how we got our vineyards back then. But now it is different, because now the people know that we look for vineyards, and now people call us, or the neighbors come to us and ask us if we want to take over their vineyards. But it is tough, because when you get a new vineyard, you can be sure that 10 other people wanted that vineyard too. And then you get like a bad eye that you have that vineyard now and the other one did not get it. Some people, some wine growers do not greet us anymore, or they're not happy with us. But it is what it is. It is a tough to get vineyards here.
is it not a problem in the Wachau that the younger generation doesn't want to follow up on this hard work?
I mean, it is a problem, because young wine growers that I went to school with, they don't want to work the terraces anymore, because they see how like the market and the wine prices are. I mean, the Wachau Valley is expensive, but you have to think that you need way more working hours in the steep vineyards than in the flat areas. So a wine grower that is in the Wachau Valley could work in another region 3 times more vineyards. But the price is not a third of it. So therefore, and also the yield is not that high, because it is like the soils are poor sometimes. They are like the wines stand on poor rock. So you don't have like high yields. And then they see like wines from Burgenland, and they cost even more than they can get for their wines. And the problem is that they all want to, so they have like these big idols. I mean, there are like these, let's say 5 well-known wineries in the Wachau Valley, and everyone wants to be like them. But when it is from these wine growers, it is not easy to come to that point where they are. So they should focus on a completely different style to be able to get more money for the wines. So, and some of them, they can't sell a Smaragd over 12 euro, and this is not much. They sell like a Federspiel or Steinfeder for 7 to 8 euros. And they work in terraces. So this is not that much. And that's why some of the younger generation is not motivated anymore to work the steep vineyards.
Because you only work on steep vineyards, right?
We have 85% that is just vineyards worked by hand. We can't go in with a tractor. We do have 2 vineyards that we can work by machine now. These will go into our basic blend. And this is also where our sheeps are. So easier access vineyards, especially in the vineyards where you can't go in with a machine. You have mostly old wines, old rootstocks. And this is way more interesting for us than like a flat vineyard that was cultivated strongly with heavy machines.
Dear friends, I have to talk to you about something really magical. The last 2 years were quite challenging for me, working at least 45 hours a week as a sommelier, planning our wedding, keeping my workout goals in check, and studying for the WSET diploma on the side. was not unusual for me to feel sluggish, unfocused, and unmotivated even. But the last 2-3 months were much easier thanks to one product, Magic Mind. This little green drink is a tasty combination of 12 main ingredients, including mushrooms, nootropics, adaptogens, and vitamins, respectively. It was created by accomplished scientists, such as Dr. Andrew Weil. Maybe you know him from the Joe Rogan podcast. And besides boosting productivity, it even helps reducing daily stress with active ingredients like ashwagandha. So instead of drinking 8 espressi a day like before, I just had 1 shot of Magic Mind every day after lunch with 1 espresso, an hour before my study sessions. And I was back in the game, feeling sharper and more focused without the roller coaster effect of any other common stimulant. The awareness, better focus, and to be honest, even better mood has lasted into the late hours at work beyond 10 p.m. Even the taste is quite pleasant, especially if you keep it chilled in the fridge. I think everyone needs a push in his or her daily hustle, and I think Magic Mind could work for you just as well as it has worked for me. And if you want to get it cheaper than others, you can get a staggering 56% off your first subscription via the link in the show notes, or 20% off your one-time purchase if you use the code WINEGHOST20 in the checkout. That's WINEGHOST without the usual S at the end, 20 in the checkout. But you can find everything in the show notes.
Like you not only have old wines, right? You also planted new varieties.
I mean, we have like the first vineyards what we bought, they were abundant. So there was old Neuburger on it, but like they were not cultivated like for 10 years. So we get rid of the old wines, the dead wines, and there we started to replant now. We started that 3 years ago. We always wanted to at the beginning to replant it with Neuburger. This was a parcel in Schön. There is a bit of Neuburger, and we wanted always to replant it with Neuburger. But due to different circumstances, we decided to not do it with Neuburger because Neuburger has some problems of kind of disease in the breeding, and also with the climate change, we are facing huge problems with Neuburger. So we decided Neuburger has a very compact cluster, so this leads very easy to botrytis. It's a cultivar which also the berries are very liked by mouses, birds, and other stuff. And then on top, if you have like in climate change years, like last year, we have drought stress. There's Neuburger quite good, but then we have like strong rainfalls, and the strong rainfalls often lead with the compact cluster to botrytis, something what we don't look for it. So this is a bit difficult. And then on the other hand, it has a kind of disease, which is probably we don't know it really at the moment where it's coming from. So there's still research going on, but it's mainly probably a selection disease in Wachau Valley, where the internodes get really short and the wines are not growing good. And this is like on a lot of old wines of Neuburger, but you can also get it on young wines what you buy from the nurseries. And if you like replant it like we did, so without machine, huge work to replant the vineyard, and we replanted it in Stockkultur, so a very dense way of planting system. We said we don't do like, it was like in the Schön, it was like over 1,000 wines, planting everything by hand. And then in 2 years you come on the idea, or you see that they are having this disease of short internodes, and you have to get everything out once again. We said, no, we're not doing that. And we saw already in the old vineyards that they're under the Neuburger, there was always Chardonnay, and they fit very good together. So we decided to plant Chardonnay in Stockkultur and the Schön. And then a bit further, the Spitzegraben, we had another vineyard. There we decided to plant Syrah. This is Syrah, a single pour system in Stockkultur.
Is it basically a vote for the future? Because for the warm climate, because Syrah ripe in the Wachau, that would be for 20 years ago, that would be impossible.
We went there, and it was 2019 at the beginning where I was coming, or I was like half a year in the Wachau, and we went in the vineyard, and I said directly it's more soil for red wine than for white wine, because it's like on pure rock. So there's not a lot of surface of earth, like 40 centimeters, and then it's either amphibolite, quartzite, or paragneiss. So the wines have to dig somehow with the roots into the stone, and these vineyards are normally always drought stressed. So maybe there have been not drought stressed the last 30 years, but they are drought stressed in the last 5 to 10 years. So the last 5 years we always had mainly drought stress. And I said this is not really a bottom for white cultivars, more for red cultivar, because you look for some kind of drought stress in a red cultivar. Yeah, and Syrah, because the soil is very similar to a lot what I know where you plant Syrah. So Syrah is often planted like in Northern Rhone on granite, or on steep slopes which are not having a lot of limestone. And Greenspit, we don't have a lot of limestone, so we have mainly gneiss, different variations of gneiss, and that's why we tried with Syrah. I think in some years maybe it will not get totally ripe, it will get a nice rosé, but we will see.
What did the other vintners say in the in the region when you planted Syrah? Did
think
they say that you are crazy, or?
I think everybody would said it's crazy, because they will rather tend to plant Pinot Noir, because it's the more closer red cultivar which gets now ripe.
I mean, they already think that we're crazy just because of the system and of the vineyard that we took back then, because nobody wanted that vineyard, because it's in German it is a Steinbruch, so where you got stones from it. So it's like this edge of stone, of rock, and on top of that edge there is the vineyard, and you have to walk up a small path to come over that edge, and then on top of that edge there is the vineyard, and nobody wanted to work that a part of it. There is no wine since 70 years, and there is a reason why there is no wine since 70 years, because it's just very hard to work up there and to get there. And so the people thought already that we're crazy to take it. And then we planted single poles or Stockkultur, and then we got questions if we plant tomatoes, because the people do not, they haven't seen it for quite a long time. And when there are tourists, they haven't seen it ever. So they see it for the first time, that density of long poles and sticks. They know it just from their gardens at home when they plant tomatoes. And yeah.
Why did you decide, why did you want to do Stockkultur?
Because the vineyard was made for that. Because the vineyard is where the walls, the terraces are very, let's say, crooked. Some are wider, some are more narrow, and then they make like turns and have curves, and every terrace is a bit steep, so they are not flat. And to get there a regular system that everyone has, like with wires and poles, we would rebuild every walls and reshape the vineyard. And we said that we do not want to do that. We do not want to go in there with heavy machines and turn the soil and remove all the old walls. I mean, there is a lot of work in these old walls. So we said that we will make a single pole, a Stockkultur in it, because it was the most natural way to replant it.
You have this kind of contradiction that you somehow respect the past, because you said that there is a lot of work in these stone walls, so you kind of respect the old, but you still are somehow a rebellion because you do everything else differently than the Wachau basically asks for, or screams basically at the customer's face.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely not forget the past. I mean, we have like every wine grower, when you think of the time where wine is made in the Wachau Valley, this is such a long time. These are like hundreds of years. We have such a small period. How long can we make wine together? It's like 40, maximum 50 years. This is for that vineyard a very short time. And I think we should try to use that short time as best as we can for the soil, because there will be people after us and they will hopefully thank us for what we did and not going in like with crazy machines. Also the Stockkultur, it's also like, it feels different because you have a different relation to a wine when it's on the ground, because I mean, like, you have to bend to every wine. You go for every wine on the knees to work it. It's like crazy, and you have a different relation to these wines than also when you can't cultivate them by machine. It's not one of thousands of wines, so it is that wine, and you know that this wine will always grow a bit slower or doesn't have that much growth than the other. So you have a different relation when you work by hand, and the Stockkultur even more.
And you have to give kind of more respect for a wine if you have to bend
Yeah.
to your neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what do you think of this system, which is still the dominant system in the Wachau, so the ripeness level and the single variety and single vineyard? Do you think it's still a good system and works for the coming decades, or do you think it's going to change?
The main issue that we have is like with the DAC system, that they just allow Grüner Veltliner and Riesling in single vineyards, because what we see in the last few years, Grüner Veltliner cannot handle heat that well. So when we have like periods of drought, you see that Veltliner always struggles, and you can taste that in the wines later, and you have to water them way more. So with irrigation system, and most of our vineyards are not irrigated, but even the irrigated ones, you see that they struggle when it's really dry. The best vineyards, or what people say they are the best vineyards, that's also often the hottest spots. And then they allow Grüner Veltliner and Riesling on it. So Grüner Veltliner sits always or often in very hot spots. This decision is not thought through, because they will see in the next years, when we have more of these dry periods, that they won't be happy with Veltliner in these hot places.
This is especially for Grüner Veltliner in Spitzegraben often, because Spitzegraben is like on a very poor soil. And I mean, it's the coolest region of the Wachau Valley, but it's
also one of the poorest with the soil. So where the plant does not have a lot of soil before the rock comes. So it is a cool part, but it does not mean that the wine does not have drought stress, because there is no like water reserve below, because there is a rock underneath. So they also struggle in the cooler areas.
But how much cooler is it actually than, let's say, Krems? Because what I had in the past is like 2 weeks, the difference in terms of ripeness.
So what I've learned, so in the average of a year, the Spitzegraben is 1 degree cooler than like Leuben, for example. But it does not sound a lot, but it is a lot, because I also learned that it's just 1 degree from the Wachau Valley to Bordeaux region in the average of a year. But what the main difference is also is like the rainfalls. The Spitzegraben is on the foot of the highest mountain along the Danube, the Jauerling, that is almost 1,000 meters high. And there is like this valley coming out, and then the Danube, so the Wachau Valley is also coming down from Melk, and then there is the Spitzegraben Valley coming also. And there is like, when there are coming 2 winds, there is like a circulation of weathers when these 2 winds come together. And when there is a rain cloud, the rain cloud will not move. It will start to turn, and when it will let the rain down or the hail. So we have way more rainfalls than heavy rainfalls than like Weißenkirchen, for example, or Leuben. And Weißenkirchen and Wösendorf, it's not that far away. It's like 5 kilometers. And there is a big difference. I mean, the Spitzegraben is already known for hail. And
so it's kind of more extreme side of the Wachau Valley. So either you have the cool winds in the night, which comes down from the Waldviertel, but you have also like rough vineyards on pure rock, which heats up themselves very strongly because it's mainly south-facing. So this, and on top you have like heavy rainfalls which get created by the difference of heat in the valley and the cold air on the top of the mountain. So it's kind of a bit more extreme than than the other parts, like Arnstorf, for example, which is more influenced by the Danube, and the Danube is quite big. So it slows down these extremes a bit.
It balances out, yeah.
Winter it's not so cold because of the water. In summer it doesn't heat that strong up because the Danube creates like a movement of air a bit because the water is way cooler than the air around it. So that's the difference is a bit also the big river what we have, and which is not really in the Spitzergraben, which is not really strongly influenced by the Danube.
And also like in autumn, the Danube always creates like a fog. And right, also when we start to harvest, or harvest time is always also time for fog, and it is just the fog is always like close to the Danube, but not in the Spitzergraben. For Botrytis, for example, the vineyards that are close to the Danube are way better because they have like these high humidity, what it also needs when it is in the fog. So this is also a main difference. So the Spitzergraben has less fog than the vineyards along the river. And for us, this is a disadvantage, the fog, because we don't want to have Botrytis in our wines.
Which is also maybe a bit untraditional, so to say, in the Wachau, right? Because a lot of, you already mentioned the big five. I think you also worked for one of them. They get also some complexity from the Botrytis quite often, if I'm not mistaken. But this is also a conscious choice from your side that you don't want that. Do you see that there was also a clear cut in terms of what markets then you're gonna approach with your wines? So not only with the choice of the name or not only with the varieties, but also that you don't use Botrytis, you use fresher grapes, lower alcohol, maybe even higher acidity, even though your wines have wood, so basically a bit more and also malolactic, so also a bit more broadness, so to say, or a bit more mouthful, and maybe not as fruity as maybe the wines from the stainless steel. Or how do you see your style?
When I met Daniel, I knew from the beginning that our wines will be different and that we will have a different market. So people that drink typical Wachau wine are not our customers, to be honest, but we do have respect to the other wineries here because we all work in the same region. We all face the same problems, even when we handle some of them different with reacting with other varieties or planting other varieties. We still all have the same issues. For our wines, we definitely see them in another market, and it was never.
I think we wanted always to represent another interpretation of the Wachau Valley, because the big thing what I was thinking is missing in the Wachau Valley was a different interpretation. You had a small movement now in the Spitzergraben, because in Spitzergraben they already took another path in terms of less Botrytis, more fresher wines, more mineral wines.
I mean, the movement is not that small in the Spitzergraben. It is a big movement, but compared to the like in the Spitzergraben, but when you compare it to the
whole wine area,
to the complete area, it is like just a tiny part that tries something else. But this tiny part always has. Every one of them had issues with other wineries. They do not understand what we are doing because they say you do not embrace the style of the Wachau Valley, and that is a problem for them. But with the style, I mean, I always say, who defined the typical Wachau style? That did happen like maybe 50 or 60 years ago. So also just a very short period of the wine history of the valley, and they said this is now the typical style, and the wine has to taste like that. We use mostly stainless steel, big oak, no small oak. We use botrytis, higher alcohol. And when you see some like books from like 100 years ago, the grapes, the wines, what they had, they were all light. They were, I mean, the Wachau was is still the latest wine growing region in Austria in terms of harvest. So the grapes were very light. The style was very different back then. And then they came some wineries and they did it different. And this was then the new standard of winemaking. But this was made by a few, but they can't say that this is the style of the Wachau Valley now, because like 300 years ago, they did not have stainless steel. That was not tradition. But these 5 or 6 wineries, they write big on the houses, tradition and heritage and terroir, but they all use selected yeast. They all use carbon to fine their wines. And this is also not like, this is not terroir for us. So for us, a small wood does not influence the terroir, or, I mean, sure, it does a bit, but it is not like a strong impact like a selected yeast for us. Yeah, I think you can't define, or 5 families can't define a style of a wine growing region. This is not possible. And we wanted to show another type, because a lot of wineries, they tend to try to stay in that type that they created a few years ago, or like 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Yeah, sure. And I think more diversity in such a traditional region is only for the benefit. And also you already, like also as Daniel said earlier, like maybe with Martin Muttenthaler, if I can maybe pinpoint just one producer from your part of the valley. This is also this fresher style without botrytis, a bit more minerally fresher kind of style, that but he is not going as far as maybe you did with the cuvées and with the BS and also other things. But I think more diversity also may be a better selling point for the region and makes it more colorful. It's also not only in our private life, but also I think in the wine world as well. And I think it's a very good movement. How did you come up with this name, that you named your winery after basically a monk or a composer from the 12th century? How did it happen?
Easy, actually, because my last name is very similar to our name. So my last name is Vogelwaide. And Michael's last name is a very traditional last name for
the Wachau Valley, very common. We said we can't make a 6th winery of called Donabaum. Then Daniel's name, we never wanted to call us a winery or a weingut, because when we started we did not have a cellar, we just had 2 vineyards, and we thought we will make 2 barrels as a hobby. We never thought that we will have our own winery that fast. And so we didn't want to use the term of weingut or winery. We found out that Daniel's grandpa or grandgrandpa always said that they sold the title, so von der, which is like a royal title, they sold it when they needed money. And we said that this is a very nice story, if it's true or not. And so we said, let's call us von der Vogelwaide.
And in the German-speaking world, it's a very easy name to remember, because everybody who went to school learned about Walter von der Vogelwaide. So you don't get confused about my last name Vogelwaid if it's something else. So it was very easy to remember.
So it was a good marketing strategy also, because people remember the name because they've learned it already in school. So they read it, and they have, like, even when they do not know where they know the name from, they heard it somewhere. A bit of an advantage, I would say, in the German-speaking market, so Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.
Out of Germany, it's a very difficult name. I think for our American clients, it's one of the most difficult German name, because it's 2 times V in the name.
Yeah, and how do you come up with the other names? Because your wines also carry like strange names. I mean, strange not if you speak German, but if you don't speak German, like Frauwelt and Baldstanz, and I don't know like a Norwegian man how he pronounces like Baldstanz. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it also came with the name of Walter von der Vogelwaide, so with the name of the winery in the end, because he was he wrote poems. And he has one poem that is called Frau Welt, ich hab von dir getrunken, which means, translated, Frau Welt, I have taken a sip of you. And the Frau Welt back then was stood for the temptation. So we said this is a very good name for a wine. And so we fixed that name for one of our categories. And then we looked for another name, and then we read the word Tandrate, and he used it as a fill word to describe a nice moment, or he used it to describe like a more erotic moment, let's say that. Yeah, so we said that's also like when the word describes a nice moment, this could be one name for our wines. And in the end, we found out where the word originally comes from, and it comes from the birds. So when a bird starts to fly, the wings make a noise. And the word for that noise is called Tandrate. And he liked that noise so much that he used the word that describes the noise to describe something else, something beautiful. And this is where this name comes from. And the Balztanz, that's the dance of the bird to attract another bird. So it's like these funky dances.
The word Balz in German is especially for the dance of the male bird to
attract the
female bird.
And these are the names the 3 names for our categories from the Vogelwaide wines. And then we also have now an experimental line where we have also 3 wines, but they do not have a bird on it, and they are called Cane Grade, which means low in sugar. This name is more like a fun name. Because in 2020, when we had the heavy hail in the Spitzergraben, people were all complaining about the Grade, so the sugar in the grapes, and a lot of them sell their grapes and they get paid more money when the grapes have more sugar. And for us, it was kind of funny to see that the people complain about that and they value their grape after the sugar. And so we said, it's so funny, the term Cane Grade, you heard that everywhere. And Daniel said, once we will make a wine that is called like that. And it's like, it is a fun name. And it is easy to say in every language because you can pronounce it in every language. I mean, sometimes it sounds different, but it is easier to pronounce in Balztanz, Frau Welt, and Tandrate, especially in English countries or other languages. It is easier.
Cool. Passionate wines, passionate names.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking time. Unfortunately, I have to sell some wine as well. Not only talk about it. So I have to work in a half an hour approximately. So thanks for taking time.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your work today. Sell some wine.
Yeah. Maybe some days even yours. Cool. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.